If you've ever been to a live concert or seen your favourite musicians performing live on TV, you may have noticed that they were wearing these in-ears. But what are they listening to through them? And are they really necessary? Well, a year back, I did a short video on these and you guys had so many questions that I thought I'd give you a more in-depth view. When you are singing or performing, it is really critical that you can hear yourself clearly. And traditionally, this was done with wedges. Wedges, as the name suggests, are a wedge-shaped loudspeaker floor monitor. These are placed on stage facing the performers and play the music back to the musicians so they can hear themselves clearly. Legend has it that the Beatles were the first people to use on-stage monitors when they couldn't hear themselves over their screaming fans in the 1960s at the height of Beatlemania. Their sound engineers decided to simply turn some of the speakers that were facing the audience around to face the band so they could hear themselves. For a long while, wedges were the only way of doing this effectively, but they presented other problems in the form of hearing health, sound quality, and the mobility of the musicians. Something smaller and more effective was needed, and this came about in the form of the in-ear monitor. The first basic homemade in-ears were made in the 1970s, and they were essentially earbuds attached to a radio pack. Now, these weren't very good quality and were certainly not available to the everyday musician. More effective in-ear monitors were made by Chris Lindop on the Stevie Wonder tour in the 1980s. These were better sound quality, although not perfect, but they did allow sound to be fed directly into Stevie's ear. However, these were not made with hearing health in mind and didn't protect the wearer from the loud noises from the band or audience, and they weren't for sale in the public forum, so it would be more than a decade until any significant development occurred. Then in 1995, a sound engineer called Jerry Harvey, who has an amazing CV, he's worked with people like Kiss, Motley Crue, Morrissey, The Cult, K.D. Lang and Linkin Park, to name a few, was working with Van Halen. The drummer, Alex Van Halen, felt the noise from the monitors was hurting his ears, which he was probably right, and he didn't feel like he could communicate with the band properly. He went to Jerry for a solution. After researching current in-ears, Jerry realised that there was nothing that really solved the problem, nothing created complete isolation from external sounds. And the sound quality was tinny and didn't give the musicians an accurate representation of what they were producing. Jerry decided to do something about it. He created the first ever dual speaker custom in-ears, which he moulded to Alex's ears himself. This allowed a greater frequency of sounds to be heard, so it was much better quality, and it had true isolation. Skid Row were touring with Van Halen at the time, and was so impressed by it that they offered to pay $3,000 per pair for each member, including Sebastian Bach the singer. The custom in-ear was born. Since then, the work of many sound engineers has evolved and improved the in-ears, and since the early 2000s, they became accessible to the everyday musician for a fairly reasonable price. So let's have a look at in-ears and what they do and what makes them so great. So much like an earbud, they sit in the structure of your ear, but unlike an earbud, they create a seal between your ear canal and the in-ear monitor themselves, creating isolation. So here are 8 reasons why they work. Number 1, superior sound quality. Because the in-ears fit really tightly into the ear, the seal between the in-ears themselves and your ear canal blocks out the outside noise. It also means that the sound coming from the monitors goes directly into your ear canal, which means you can hear things with more detail at less volume. Which leads me on to number 2, hearing health. It's no surprise given the loud environment that they're constantly in, but musicians are 4 times more likely to deal with noise-induced hearing loss and 57% more likely to develop tinnitus. Listening to anything above 85 decibels for an extended period of time can damage your hearing health, and musicians often have to hear things at that level. In-ears block out the sound of outside noise, whether it be amplified instruments, drums, or the audience, which all can be really, really loud. They also allow you to have the mix at a lower level, protecting your ears. Number 3, individual mixes. Because the sound is isolated to each performer rather than the entire stage, then the performer can choose the mix that they want. So everything is completely personalized. It also means that you can put on things like click tracks and cues, and the audience won't hear them. Number 4, reduced vocal strain. This one is a great one for singers, of course. Because you have that lower mix in your ears, it reduces that urge to push. You don't have to fight against the band, you don't have to sing louder, you can hear yourself clearly and sing with more precision. Number 5, elimination of feedback and clean sound for the audience. If you've got speakers on stage blasting sound back at you, some of this can get picked up by your microphone, and this gets amplified and makes this horrible noise. Even without the full effect of feedback, some of those lower frequencies still can bleed into the audience mix, which really muddies the sound. With everyone having their in-ear monitors, this shouldn't happen, and it allows the audience mix to be clean and the sound engineer to do what he is best at doing, making the best sound possible for the audience and for the musicians. Number 6, mobility. Stage monitors take up a lot of space, they've got loads of wires, and they are also directional, so that means you have to stand in front of them to hear your sound. This means that if you want to run around on stage, you're pretty stuck. With in-ears, you can move around, there is no stage clutter, and you have fantastic sound even when you are crowd surfing. Number 7, portability. In-ears are small and portable. On-stage speakers are £45, so you have 2 choices. You can take your big old speakers with you, lug them to every venue and have your sound set up how you want to, or you can use the venue speakers that they have and configure everything around those speakers. With in-ears, that completely solves that problem. Number 8, stereo sound. In-ears empower the singer to set the mix that they want, but also nowadays in-ears are generally in stereo, which means you can have more of one sound in one ear than in the other ear. So you could have a bit more drums here and a bit more guitar here. This is much more natural for the ear. It sounds as if you're being surrounded by instruments rather than mono, where you're getting the same thing in both ears. And this is great for a few reasons: clarity, general enjoyment, and of course, hearing health. So this all sounds awesome. You want some. What are your options? Well, as you can see, I'm not going to go into massive detail here, but I have my own custom in-ears, which are made to the shape of my ear. It's kind of weird being able to see what the inside of your ear looks like. These are a little more expensive than the average on the market, but there are pros and cons to this. Because it does fit to my ear, it fits really, really snugly in, which means they're really durable, and I'm definitely not getting any bleed from outside noise, so my hearing is really, really protected. Personally though, I really like my Sennheiser IE400 Pro. Now, I'm not even being sponsored by these guys, but there is a specific reason that I like them that's maybe different to the general musician. The one con for these guys for me is they're quite fiddly to take in and out. These are really, really quick and easy. So as a vocal coach, I will go to gigs and I will have to listen to the mix that the performer is listening to and then quickly switch over to the mix that the audience hears out front. So I'm gonna have to take them out really, really, really quickly. And for me, this gives a great sound and I'm able to take them out really quickly. However, hearing health is so important and you do get a little bit of bleed from the outside noise. So if you're gigging regularly in loud settings, I would really recommend going to pay that little bit more for a pair of customs because your hearing will thank you in the long run. Okay, so this sounds great, but sometimes you see that singers aren't wearing them and sometimes they take them out during performances. Why would that be? Well, of course, there are always problems, there could be interference, there could be a problem with the mix, mistakes happen. But there are also some important things to consider when you're looking into getting in-ears. Sometimes in smaller venues, there is only one sound desk. This means there just isn't the option of having your own mix. But the most common reason is that it does take a little bit of getting used to in-ears because that isolation makes you feel a little bit disconnected from the audience. Sometimes in smaller, more intimate gigs where you're playing something like an acoustic set which isn't very loud, it's much better just to have your ears free to be able to get that direct connection. But in bigger gigs where it is really, really important, sound engineers do get around it. Often, sound engineers will set up ambient microphones which pick up the sound of the audience and send the sound directly back to the singer. Then the singer gets to pick how loud they want the audience to be within their mix as well. Having said that, no matter the size of the venue, how big or small it is, sometimes you just want that direct connection with the audience. And as any performer will tell you, it's all about the audience. Down.